to this. Councillors and staff. This meeting is being live streamed via Zoom webinar facilities. Recordings of council meetings or parts of council copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without the prior written consent of the general manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on the council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Council acknowledges that the meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gumungurra and Dara people, and respects the history and culture of the elders both past and present. The record of attendance, one change in the staff is not Ifty Judge Sajid, it is David Battle as the acting technical services manager. Councillor McCarthy is requested to leave his absence. I'll move a second, please. Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden, all in favour. We also have Deb Keane on Zoom today. She's got one item that she's reporting on, which is the yarning circuit. And we have Gary Stiles, who is our special project manager in attendance to talk to the
Apologies, Mr. Chair. Jim and I had a truck that was meant to be arriving at 11 o'clock, they arrived at 1 o'clock.
And you said you'd be 5 minutes late, and you're only 1 minute late. That's excellent time.
And I do apologise to my colleagues over the chair.
All right. Any declaration? Any declaration?
To be safe with the.
Any declaration? No? All right. The confirmation of minutes. Item 4.1, and it's confirmation of works committee meeting of 7th of March 2023. The recommendation is that the minutes of the works committee meeting held on the 7th of March 2023 be noted. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation to accept the minute. I was going to ask with that if I may be able to get some information through the course prior to our general meeting regarding the well at the comments that our general manager put on notice. That was all. That's never been used.
Report that you'll do with that.
All right. All those in favour? Passing unanimously. All right. Item 5.1, yarning circle flagpole proposal for the plan. Recommendation is the council support the yarning circle and flagpole concept. The progression of the project should be granted. Should grant funding be confirmed. Councillor Hayden. You want to make a proposal?
Yes, I'd like to make a proposal on the recommendation.
Yeah.
That council word to say that council support the yarning circle, but we leave the flagpole component out until another date.
So you want that to read that the council support the yarning circle
Concept and progression of the project. Project.
All right, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, this yarning circle, there's the new committee in town, the Aboriginal community committee that has been set up. They hold meetings with Deborah King at the Information Centre in WA. And quite a number of people attended that meeting. The PDAR Lao has sought funding for this yarning circle, so it will be of no cost to council. Just a couple of notes in there. We have an old well that is down at the Commons, so we may have to go through the Common Working Party to seek a removal of the old well and put the yarning circle into that position. So it will be easier for the maintenance around that surrounding area. And that will be pending any further information from the general manager as well, location.
I like the idea of the yarning circle, especially if it's going to be fully funded from elsewhere. My only query is whether the location mentioned in the report or the alternative location is really the best. I would have thought that they would want it in a relatively private location in the event that there's any sensitive matters to be discussed. And even though the area is currently there, further over toward Curtis Street, I would have thought somewhere over in that area on a flat area near the Indigenous garden, in the long run, I would have thought that would be better, just for that privacy without, lots of picnickers or others walking past all the time. So I would suggest that that they have another consideration of the location, but that doesn't affect the motion. I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this?
I'm assuming that the yarning circle can be used by others if they want to just have a chat as well. So I'm fully supportive.
Councillor Ryan, will support it. Will support it. Councillor Trimber?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Yeah, I'm happy to support Councillor Graham with not including the flags. I think that we already have flags on our council building as we show our respect, and it's not necessary to have them associated, just in particular the yarning circle.
Thank you. Anyone else? I support the motion as well. I think the issue of its location is really up to a bit of collaboration between us as a public working party and the Aboriginal community working party. I think there's probably room to move in there. So there's nothing else. I'll the motion, all those in favour? The motion has been passed unanimously. We'll now. The motion is as voted. Motion is passed unanimously. All right. 5.2, the Capital Works Delivery Program Progress Update. Recommendations report of item 05.2 be received as information. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Chip, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move that recommendation, and it's called very lengthy report, and I think there is.
Yes, I'm happy to second it. I've got just a couple of questions. Originally, I understand that the what do we call it, the 1.26 million that was spent on roads to not roads recovery. We had to use by the 30th of June, but I note that there was a note in here to say that that had been extended.
Environmentally affected roads.
Environmentally affected roads, thank you.
That's correct.
That has been extended, so that allows us a bit more leeway, because I know we were desperately trying to get it all done by the 30th of June this year.
That's correct.
The other question that's always dear to my heart, and with all those attendees here, have we had anything from PWA on the detailed design yet for the STP?
Through the chair, Eric, that's probably in the room.
That's why I asked the question.
The project be between 20 and 25% complete and detailed design, documentation and the tender report. They're about 2 months behind. Public Works have had a lot of work on, so the start was slow. If we keep it within 2 months, my expectation is that I'll apply a lot more resource very quickly to it. But they're through they're well into the design of the process for the reactor and the reactor itself, which are the first two key components to be designed, as well as all the preliminaries.
So when do we estimate? September?
In August, I'd say it was due on the 36th.
Yeah.
So it's 2 months. I'd expect at the end of August. Shouldn't trouble us terribly because we provided a little bit of leeway in the schedule to call tenders after that.
I think we looked at September when we're going to start, I think. Yeah. 11th of September.
So the expectation would now be that it's completed by the end of the year. Well, it's due in, October, but I don't tell you on something.
Because I think the timetable originally was May, then it slipped a month to June. I think we worked on May originally.
All right, when we signed them up, it was to be at the end of June, but we may well have extended it prior to signing them. A large funding application for some top-up funding under the Growing Regional Economies Fund. So hopefully that'll bear fruit.
Fine. Thanks very much. And if I could, through Mayor, the manager asked the technical service director, if on the Gantt chart is a great way of representing, but if I could go to page 29, and there are a couple of instances of this. For instance, look at fixing local roads. And we look at across to the percentage complete. That's 35%. But as I understand, a number of those projects are extending into 23, 24. That's correct, isn't it? So for instance, you've got two lots of the Arkstone Road.
Correct.
And one of them's due for completion 30th of June 23, and it's 50% done now.
That's right. It's,
Are we actually going to achieve the other 50% by the 30th of June?
we'll probably not know. Is that why the representation of that expenditure amount in the cost column only says for this year, 928,000?
Yes.
The current financial year, and the remainder will go into next financial year. So
Okay, but
round three.
if you're looking at this Gantt chart, because it doesn't extend into the next year, you're sort of saying, well, we've spent 50 and we've got to get the other 50 spent by the 30th of June because the date for completion there is 30th of June. So on Arkstone Road 1, I'm talking about.
So at the time of writing the report, certainly we're going down the path of starting to put the base course down now. So I'm expecting that certainly we'll ramp that up reasonably quickly to the 30th of June. It probably won't get fully spent. So we were a little bit delayed with this particular project, but we still have that flexibility to, as you said, quite rightly pointed out, to continue into 2024.
So I'm just wondering where, say, for instance, in the second round 4, obviously none's been spent, and most of it's going to be spent next year, whether we either need a note or a later completion date.
So through the chair, if you remember, Riley, this is going to be it's a work to be developed on. I think it was.
No, I think it's gone a long. I'm the first to say, with the greatest compliments, it's gone a long way from where we first got it.
I'm not probably. It's just something that we need to pick it up to go. Yes, we may need to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it hurts the Gantt chart if we say for Arkstone 4, do whenever. But yeah, I think that makes it a more realistic, because when you look at the percentages, then it makes sense.
Yeah, if I said I'm just representing that there now because we're still in a tendering phase. So come back to council for that FLR4.
Yeah, so I think, you know, and there are a couple of others here, but by and large, it gives us a pretty good synopsis of where we are together with the commentary. As I said, that was one of the things I picked up was the environmentally affected. We've had an extension, and obviously we're all holding our hat with the STP and hoping the building cost might come down by the time we unlikely that we get there.
The external.
But anyway, thank you very much. I'll be more than happy to second.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions. First is on page 26, the street being master plan. So councillors have asked a number of times over the last 12 months about timing for when planning is on the start, and have been repeatedly assured it would happen during autumn. Well, autumn's now over, and if we start planting now, we risk losing trees during the winter. It doesn't look as though we're on the verge of starting planting anyway, because it says staff will be seeking quotations and possible assistance. So I'm wondering, I'd like an explanation of why it hasn't happened and when it will happen.
So purely it hasn't started. Resourcing. And again, if you recall, we just actually completed the planning down at the Oberon Rec Ground. And that's been done by an external person, or business. Of course, we're consulting with that business again to start fast tracking this, and you also realise that we're looking at the O'Connell Road. So at the same time, hoping that they'll run concurrently to get these projects delivered. So
But that's part of my point of, do we want to fast track it now that we're into winter? Do we now have to leave it till spring?
look, I don't think we have to wait, to be honest with you. I think this is the best time to really put them in the ground, right of the heat.
I thought the advice had always been that autumn was the best.
I think you're right. It is that they need to be dormant rather than say autumn, because this autumn's been quite bizarre and a lot of trees are still not dormant.
Through the chair, it would be reticent of us to go outside the recommendations of an expert. If we engage an expert and they don't do it, we wouldn't do it. So points made, but I think that we certainly wouldn't be putting them in if there was an issue with their ability to supply.
And the main part of the point was the repeated promises that it was going to have happened by now.
Through the chair, there has been a number of competing interests that council needs to be pushing and pulled in, which is why we engaged the outside contractor to complete the project that we have.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say, having planted a considerable number of trees, probably something like 40,000. I found that planting them all 3 winters fine, both deciduous and gums. Helps if you put a protective sheath around it, as we all know. But I have actually planted them all 3. In fact, the worst thing is if you plant them in spring and you have a dry spring, or you plant them too late to the end of spring, and you can lose them. If you get them in winter.
It sounds like my expertise, but just going on the advice that we've all been given.
Well, I can only talk from, sorry, I can only talk from experience. I agree with you.
My next question, Mr. Mayor, is page 24, Noonan Silver Road culvert. When can we expect the final costing report on that project?
Through the chair, we're currently working with Transport New South Wales, quite an extensive backlog on the council claim. It's been a matter of progress.
What's that got to do with Transport New South Wales?
When they actually do the assessment and administer that through the national.
I thought it was Noonan Silver Road.
You're talking about the component in terms of the recoup the national result.
The final cost for the whole culvert project, and then how the extra over what council originally allocated will be covered.
Until that is resolved with transport, and who actually administer that back to us.
So they're paying the extra, the 80 or maybe.
We're progressing that plan with them now, so not saying that we're getting that money back at some stage, but through the chair. That particular project was inundated with floods 3 times during the construction phase. We launched a natural disaster claim for that particular project. What with the same, they're working with the funding authority to see whether they will in fact provide some recourse to
the extra
that we incurred under the environmentally affected roads fund in order to do
that's
that.
the bit I can clear it out. Back on page 26, the 5th dot point talks about the Losemont Road project. Sent an email a few weeks ago just asking, was there any sort of environmental assessment done, and hoping that could go on to the portal the same as the Oakstone Road one did.
Definitely has been undertaken, and will probably would have been up there. We'll take that on note. I think it has to get final. Something yet, but it does. Happy to supply council. We'll put it on the portal.
All right, so it's being done now. So what the assessment was completed prior to the start of the week?
It's done, it's in draft, isn't it? Through the chair, but the area of consideration where the work needed the REF hasn't been touched.
Okay, thank you. Still on page 26, Bailey's Lane Bridge. So the road's going to be closed for some time. So what will be the access arrangement for while it's closed? Will it be that sort of alternative route, and then how are we notifying residents or others who might turn up at the time they can get through?
Yeah, so some advertisement will have to be done, resident notification, and it's obviously the closure of the road. Alternatively, those who are on the northern side, from Bailey's Lane, will have to go back out via either the Mormons Hill Road, out of Blandon's Hill, or through the Blenheim Forest. Or the others on the southern side will have access back to Upper Point, so that will be an enduring period. It could be up to 4 to 5 weeks. You know, that's really subject to weather and how things progress.
So there won't be like a slight track or anything like that. It would be a whole detour around through Glen.
As part of the project, again, a fishery permit required. It's preferred that we don't actually have a side track. Again, from that disturbance factor of the fish packing. So that's the intent of the stage, to close the road, unfortunately.
Well, I was thinking mostly about, someone turns up from out of the area intending to go through there for whatever reason, to visit somebody or to get through, and simply meet a closure. There would need to be something at that point to explain how they can get to where they want to get to.
Look again, if you're hoping visiting someone on that particular road,
You would hope that they would let you know.
other than the road closure, the council website, the council forum.
Can we put a sign up at the closure saying where they can find information about how to block the detour?
We could put something up
The
there.
website or something like that. Just list, go to the website address on something like that.
Through the chair, councillor, are you concerned about people on the road or people on the website? Like if people on the road, I don't think they're going to look at the website. Is it are you looking for some sort of VMS or something like that on
Not necessarily. I'm just thinking of the person who, for whatever reason, turns up intending to go through. Suddenly got the closure. I want to get there, and I can't get there. How do I get there? Some way of indicating whether they can find out what the detour involves, because normally a detour would only be relatively short and you've got a detour somewhere. But that's not going to be possible in that situation, because it's right into town and out.
Yeah, we understand the complexity that's
It could just say, for detour route, go to Oberon and SW go.
I think that's the way, yeah. I mean, I think if you put in the instruction of a detour route, it'd be quite confusing.
local traffic only.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't imagining this.
Thank you.
And finally, and most critically, my question is about the information on the Gantt chart. So we've voted a number of times about getting figures showing expenditure and how they relate to current progress, so that we can all be really sure that projects are on target budget wise and are expected to be finished within budget. Now, the last time it was raised, I understood that that was going to be presented at each works meeting, and I was expecting it would be included as part of the chart today. It's not. We see the budget. We don't, and we see how much is complete in a percentage sense, but no information on the expenditure so far. So we're still lacking that ability to reassure ourselves that things are progressing on the track. So I would like to move an amendment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, which would be to add a number 2, make the existing one number 1, and then number 2 would be that a quarterly report be provided of current expenditure for each capital works project and how it relates to the progress of the works and whether the project is expected to be completed within the budget.
Shorten it up.
Sure.
a report of cost, schedule and quality.
Sure. I'm just trying to get what we've raised on a number of occasions, and I think it's just part of our council obligation to have a.
Can you clarify the motion?
So I only have a half completed motion, I'm sorry, because you both were giving me contradictory.
Very well, you
I
can say you-
was suggesting that
So
what the report is about the cost, schedule and quality.
Quarterly report on cost, schedule and quality.
yeah,
On
I'm
cap-
happy with that.
Do you want on major capital works or what were you talking about?
Well, I was intending on all capital works. And there's not that many of them.
Through the chair, could I suggest that you do a quarterly review anyway, and that you could incorporate an update in that?
Well, that was my original suggestion,
Yeah.
but that got changed. They would do it as part of the works committee. I think quarterly review time is the obvious time to do it myself, but I don't mind when.
But that would relate to the management plan.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thinking.
There is also already a requirement that at the completion of each project, there is a report on.
All right, can we actually deal with this amendment?
And through the chair, we'll get a second before you. Just,
So you've moved it, we have a seconder?
I have a motion. Like,
Sorry,
please repeat what line 2 is supposed to say.
What was your wording?
I would say a quarterly report be provided of cost, schedule and quality of each capital work project. Because they're the only three things you can report on.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm happy with that.
Is there a seconder?
you did not second it, Bruce.
Yeah, continue.
One of the second.
But, well, I've mostly spoken to it already, but as I say, I just feel that it is part of our council obligations to set up by ourselves that things are on track and that on the odd occasion when there is a problem developing, that we get some early warning and we can decide what action, if any, needs to be taken to address it. That's nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree in principle with the request to get the report. Whether it's provided at the Works Committee meeting or in a quarterly review was raised before. I don't have a preference, but I think it's good governance and good business that we do review these in the costs and expenditure against the works completed regularly. So it's normal business practice. So yeah, that's why I second the motion. I think it's probably good governance and good business. And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We already have this capital work delivery program progress update, which is provided to us at each works committee meeting. I think we've got a long way since certainly since I commenced the term before, and that we've got a Gantt chart. We're meant to highlight any cost overruns when we talk about projects in this report, and we have asked for an end of project report, and I think it was a resolution of council that we get an end of project report looking at original cost vis-a-vis actual finished cost plus any delays in the project to review and any quality issues. And that was the end of the project. Council Tucker's raised the issue about Noonan's Hill Road. Technical Services Director had just said, well, we haven't finished completing that because we're still having discussions with Transport in New South Wales to find out how much they're going to fund, how much they're not going to fund, etc. I'm sure that we will get that report at the end of the project. So I'm erring on the fact that I'm not sure we need another report because we have this delivery program progress update. I'm sure that if there's a blowout in costs or delay, it should be highlighted in this report. We have a Gantt chart that is, is a hell of a lot better. The whole report, if I can say, and I said it earlier in the meeting, it's a lot better than we originally had. So I'm sort of questioning the necessity for it.
Councillor Hayden?
Yes, I agree with what Councillor McKibben had said. We're constantly asking for reports. We've taken up a lot of our directors' time with additional reports when what's being questioned is being provided anyway, as Councillor McKibben has said.
Councillor Graham?
There, I've been quite good, agree with Councillor McKibben. I think we do have a lot of information now, and I know taking that Newton Hill project as an example, we were told well in, along that project of the difficulties and the overrunning in budget, that sort of thing. I don't think anything hidden from it. I think we've got access to a lot of information that we need.
Councillor Penbell?
Mute.
You're on mute.
There we go. Yes, I just wanted to say I fully support what Councillor McKibben has said, and Councillor Hayden and Councillor Graham. We don't need to do this. We do get enough information, so I'm not supporting this.
All right, I will put the amendment. All those in favour, sorry, you want to reply?
This is me. I'd just like to say again that the purpose of the amendment is simply to ask for what I understood was already promised the last time this issue was raised. I don't have a particular preference for exactly when each audit would be provided, whether it was part of this quarterly report at Works Committee or part of the quarterly review that outlined. It is simply a matter of adding one extra column into the Gantt chart where it currently shows the cost, meaning the total budget. An extra column showing the expenditure to date would be adequate in the review. I don't think that's much extra work because the manager must surely be monitoring that anyway. It's just a matter of writing the figure down. And if on those other occasions the project does go over, then waiting for the final cost report at the end of the project is too long. So that's my thinking of why we should be having a look at it during the course of the project. That was all. Thank you.
All right, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Tucker, all those against, sorry, McKechnie. All those against? The amendment is defeated. Now, does anyone else wish to speak to or against the original recommendation? Councillor McKechnie?
I still have a question.
That's fine.
On the report. I'm just wondering if we can get an update on the solar lighting for the path or for the access between Dudley Street and Albion. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, see it.
I read that. It's one of the, but I'm just wondering whereabouts we're up to with it, other than seeking vacation and coming into the darkest mornings and evenings of the year. And
So page 27 and 79 is at the top there, but it doesn't talk about the actual timing at the state.
so that's a good question.
Currently out seeking quotations through the chair. I've spoken to him on the central energy on this twice now, and they were assuring me that they would provide that quote, but it hasn't been provided this one time, so I'll take it on.
Yeah, I do have another question on that part that I'll raise the there with something.
Okay.
It's not really to do with the capital work.
Any more council wish to speak? Councillor McKechnie?
Oh, my only comment is there is a comment on page 27 that may allay Councillor Tucker's concern to some degree, and Councillor Keegan. It is considered that all projects are progressing within budget allocations. So if they're not, then it should be noted there. And maybe we should have noted Noonan Hill, but that was, so maybe for next time to note Noonan Hill there.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed. Item 5.3, plan to hire contractor panel for 2023 to 2025 financial years. The recommendations of 22 tendered and compliance submissions be adopted as the preferred pre-assessed contractor panel for the period commencing 1 July 2023 to 30th of June 2025. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Gibbon, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation. I don't have much further to say on that, except that we take, the director's notes that is listed there on board.
I'm more than happy to second this. I've just got a question. And I know we may have touched on this previous meeting, so please advise me if we have. Well, we did touch on it, but the comment on page 33, the appointment of a contractor panel for individual work will not exceed the local government tendering threshold or over on council's policies. I suppose my question is, as we've gone out with an RFT for this within the local government guidelines, is there any reason we actually can't for individual panels? But we've actually complied, we have actually gone out with an RFP. Even though it's not more than 250,000 or 100, what's our bail fee?
Ours is 150
or 150.
but the tendering guidelines.
Yeah.
So through the chair, it's something that whilst the point is taken as an RFT has been provided, there is an element of risk if you go down that path rather than go out to individual tenders for individual projects that will reach that threshold. What you will notice is that instead of a yearly, we've increased that, which increases the risk because there is a combination of two things now that we have to consider. Which makes it more relatively important that we remove those two things. I take the point, and if you're going close to the mark, then I think this is what we could use. But when you know you're going to go over that tender threshold, I think regardless if you have a tender panel or approved panel, because it's for an individual project that relates to an individual work, the obligation is still to go out.
I wonder whether it's a matter that we should seek direction from local government.
More than happy to chase that through councillor. However, I'm pretty comfortable with the response that I'm going to give in regard to individual.
Okay, if you're happy with that, I'm just raising the issue because obviously every RFT we issue takes time, effort, as we've said before, councillor employees, time and effort. And we're all aware of that, and people are probably already giving their best prices forward for this. So do we,
Through the chair, I appreciate council trying to reduce the amount of time, but we also have an obligation to make sure that we meet the requirements of the Act, and sometimes we need to do this now. The fact that you've allowed us to do this over 2 years reduces that, and we appreciate it, but there is still some grayness around that. But I'm more than happy to see.
well, it might be worth it. Yep. It just might be the case that we actually get a favourable response. We don't know.
More than happy to do that. If we do
Start with a telephone call and then,
I don't, there's been many telephone calls.
It's only a minor thing, but is the terminology right in calling it a panel? The panel is the group of people that select the list of preferred service providers. But that would be right. Just being silly here.
I think it goes both ways. Yeah.
We've always called it a panel. I'm more than happy to change it. If you see the need
Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. It's good.
they do the process and
Yeah, I understand how it all works, but
I got
the different way of different terminology than what I'm used to in private enterprise. Anyway, yeah, so good.
Any other councillors wish to speak? I'll put the motion, all in favour? That's passed unanimously. All right, item 5.4, Golden Elm Tree in Carrington Avenue. The recommendation is that council proceed to remove the offending tree as the most cost-effective approach to preventing any further sewer blockages from offending the tree roots. A suitable tree, as outlined in council's endorsed street tree master plan, be provided in the locality after removal is complete. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Graham, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, some deep thought went into this over the weekend about the removal of the offending tree. Further discussion into the fact that even digging up the drain and relining could in fact also kill the tree. So it's probably best bet and the cheapest bet would be to remove the offending tree. I'm happy to endorse that recommendation and remove the tree, with many apologies to Mr. Neil, who doesn't want the tree removed. But I'm sure council under its street tree master plan will put a really nice pretty tree there for him that he can watch grow.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
Me, if there's a nice tree, I'd have a look at it, but if it's going to cause problems, it's better to get rid of it, I think.
Councillor Gibbon.
I take the point, because I've looked at this tree quite a few times. It is a very attractive tree in Carrington Avenue. We are doing a street master plan. And as with other towns, as we've discussed at great length when we originally looked at the street master plan, we have to look at the impact on our services, including stormwater drains, power, telecoms, etc. But there are means of preventing trees these days from going into drains, and there are methods that are seen to me quite effective. We are benefiting because we have had the former general manager of Orange here, who's no doubt quite an expert or knows quite a lot about this, from all the work they've done in Orange with their trees. And with your indulgence, maybe it'd be appropriate for him to comment on the methods that may be utilised. I think there are other ways, because the report that was commissioned by person number 46 seems to indicate from their perspective that this tree is in quite good health. I know, and I've had issues before with trees in a bad state of repair that have caused problems to drains, and yes, you remove them. But this tree is a significant tree in the area, and it doesn't appear from the report 46 to be in particularly bad health. Not appropriate.
Gary's here for one thing only.
Okay.
In fact, I was going to stop him speaking earlier, but.
Well, I know it did speak before, that's why.
But I'll get off him and comment on.
Oh, look, I just think it, without Gary seeing the report or having it, it makes it hard for him to comment. I'm pretty sure that he hadn't had any.
No, he hasn't, but I was talking about his general experience in providing root barriers for trees.
If he's got any comment, more than happy to hear it.
I've got enough to talk about later.
No, that's fine. I suppose I'd move a recommendation that the council investigate if there are appropriate root barrier methods to prevent the tree entering into the drainage that might be appropriate. Noting the report from Apex Tree and Garden experts that was provided.
I was intrigued by that. That's an awful long way away from the Central West to go to get a tree report.
Where's Bennett Hill?
Yes, I think they might.
Yeah, well,
Just through the theory, we do have an amendment, I just don't know if that will go, so if we can.
so can we tighten that amendment up?
Yeah, sure. The council investigate whether there are appropriate root barrier methods that can be utilised to prevent these the tree roots from this particular tree entering.
Solve the problem.
Yeah, to
Resolve
resolve
the problem.
Yeah, to resolve the problem. Because I believe there are methods now. I may not have a second.
Well, that's okay. Let's see what happens.
I just think it's a nice tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm. And I think we're gonna have this problem with the whole streetscape program, so do we want to put a precedent?
Okay, you happy with that? Justin Gibbon?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
Well, sort of, if I could propose a change to.
Well, let's get-
If Councillor McKibben is.
Line one, no, I'll listen, yeah.
Well, I'm going to change the
No,
nature of the
no, it expands on it somewhat, but it is consistent with Councillor McKibben's amendment. So my suggested change to Councillor McKibben's amendment would be to put it in two parts. Number one would be that an independent arborist's report be obtained.
So you're suggesting the arbor did that report, it's not independent.
I am suggesting that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And number two would be that a report be provided on the replacement or lining or root barrier for the existing store.
In fact, that's essentially what's already there.
Yeah, but I'm adding a couple of other options, would be either replacement or lining, as well as just root barrier.
Root barrier or other methods.
Yes.
Yeah, look, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
It's through the chair. Given the council is very clear on where we fund these things from.
That's exactly what I'm, yeah.
Could I suggest that the independent arborist report be obtained and funded through the free program that is in the TI fund?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
I don't understand why we want to fund it.
Why are we funding it? Why can't the owner that had the blocking fund it?
Through the chair. The first thing is independent arborist and. Yeah, only an independent arborist. You do it.
Can I speak to them?
Well, the council has.
What I suggested?
Okay. Why? Are you happy with so far, Councillor Gibbon? You're not happy, we just go back to your original amendment.
I'm just, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going back to page 36. Staff issues will continue with sewer blockages. Potential for limbs to fall. If the health further declines. My question, this is a comment, it's not actually talking on it. Some of the trees we have looked at and are in our street master plan happen to be elms. So we're going to be planting more elms, more oaks, and they've all got big root systems. Oaks have particularly big root systems and very strong. This, as you can see from the photograph on page 37, is close to the curb, quite away from your fence. And if we're going to have a problem with this one, we're likely to have problems with other trees. And my issue is we have to come up with a system to solve this, not just pull our trees down. And that Orange has had to, I know, and they've managed to cope with it. I think Bathurst has as well, but Orange is probably the best example. So I think we just there has to be, we have to put management in place for these things. I don't think pulling the trees down is the right solution, but that's personal comment.
So hang on, we're doing.
So I'm happy, I'm reticent to fund an arborist report. I know we have fairly well-trained people in our Parks and Gardens area already in council. I know they've had a look. Their report, their comments, and that's why I was reviewing the comment. Certainly the plumbing staff have indicated the tree has been problematic. But it does say potential for limbs to fall only if the tree's health further declines. Well, the Apex report tends to say there's nothing wrong with the health of it, really. So we're in a bit of a dichotomy there. And I don't know if you read between the lines, the council staff are actually saying there's anything seriously wrong with the health. They say if it further declines. So my comment is,
Original point.
my comment is, do we need an arborist report at this stage, or do we sort of?
Can I explain why I think?
Well, no, I want to make, you have made. You need to be happy, Councillor McKibben, with the proposed change that Councillor Tucker has put in. If you're not.
I think, and the state of the tree has indicated that we should be looking at the methods to, because we need to get our expertise in this area anyway, because of our tree planting issue, and we're going to have issues with other trees. So let's look at a barrier system that we can utilise for this tree and for others.
So what you're saying is, you think,
yeah,
we don't get an independent arbor report. So you were going back to what is essentially your initial.
Yes, there was a second part of
There was a second part, but that was Councillor Tucker. So if you don't agree to that.
I don't agree to that, but there was a part that you talked about something else other than the arborist.
Root area or other methods.
Such as lining or replacing.
Yeah, I'm happy with other methods. Yeah,
So you're happy with that?
yes.
I think Council Tucker removed himself as a listener.
Yes, I have removed myself, and if Councillor McKibben doesn't get a second, I'll have another amendment.
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor McKibben, your second move. You would speak, Councillor.
No, I think we've covered it.
Right. Any other councillors wish to speak on this amendment?
Yes.
Councillor Hayden.
I'd like to speak against the amendment only for the reason that the tree in question is over 30 years old. It has inundated the pipeline currently. Should the pipeline be relined, there's an issue where it could also penetrate it again, where the relining is. Putting a barrier up to mature trees at risk of the tree dying anyway, removing and replacing that drainage, the septic, the sewage, could actually kill the tree as well. So there's other risks there. And then the financial implications of having further surveying and looking at this tree, I just think it would make more sense to in fact remove it. And also in the future, when we're looking at our street tree master plan, then we need to address that master plan with barriers for new trees, not current old trees.
Councillor Graham.
We're looking at the council sewer lines, but what about the number 48? What we're looking at in this amendment, is that going to fix that as well, or just the council sewer pipe?
I was looking at complete barriers. We won't solve his leaves in the gutter. But I think everyone experiences leaves in the gutter, unfortunately, because of the environment we live.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will support the amendment because I think that is the most important first step before deciding what, if anything, to do with the tree. My problem with, if we were to agree to take the tree out, I don't believe that's likely to totally solve the sewer problem because the roots could be coming from other trees. Clearly, there must be some sort of problem with the sewer pipe to let roots in the first place. So it does make sense to fix that first, and if there is a problem with the health of the tree, that then becomes a separate matter.
Okay. You got anything you want to say, anything, councillor Timber? Nope.
I've been listening, I'm here. My only point would be if we do investigate a root burial method and there is nothing that can be done, we're going to be back here again talking about chopping a tree down. I agree with councillor Hayden that with the street master plan, that's when we should be making sure that we have this in place for future. It's unfortunate, beautiful tree, but that happens from time to time and we just need to be aware of that.
Good. Okay, I'm going to speak against it. Well, I think that the tree is causing problems at the moment. Chances are it will continue to cause problems. We have a street master plan. What we need to do is make sure that the trees we put in over the top of school lines need to be shallow rooted and less likely to cause problems. I agree with you, Councillor McKibben, they do fall over. If you're going to have street trees, you're going to have street trees that either fall over or have deep roots. And we need to be careful on how we do that. All right, I'll put the motion. Put the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor McKibben and Tucker, and against? Councillor Trimbar, Graham, Hayden and myself. So the amendment is defeated, lost, and we're back to the original recommendations. Well, I didn't get us. He said he'd have another motion. Sorry, another amendment, but he doesn't put that yet.
No. No, I won't put that, but I would like, now that we've reverted to the original motion, I'd like to speak to that. Yes.
I thought you'd already spoken to it.
No, I was speaking of the amendment, not the motion. So what I'd like to say about the motion to remove the tree and your comment, Mr. Mayor, that the tree will cause any problem. I think that's the point. We don't know that the tree is causing the problem. The neighbour is claiming the tree. It might be another tree. And I don't believe removing the tree is going to fix the problem with the sewer. So that was, and we have conflicting advice about whether the existing tree is healthy or not. The arborist report in here says it's healthy. The staff report says that they have detected some rot. That was my idea originally when getting another independent arborist report. I'm not going to pursue that, but I don't support removing the tree because I don't believe it's the solve.
Anyone else?
I mean, I agree with Councillor Tucker's position. And I speak with experience because we have quite a few elms myself. A number of them have some bits of rotten wood, but they've had bits of rotten wood in them for 20 years, as long as I can remember. That's the nature of elms, and they're still they're not, they're still massive trees, provide a hell of a lot of shade and very attractive trees. And with the greatest respect, I think it is, we will need deep rooted trees in order to withstand the Oberon winds. And they're the type of trees that are going to grow best in this environment. And if you look at the position of this tree on page 37, it is near the curb. It is probably in a location where our existing street master plan has indicated we're going to plant trees. I do not believe, and I believe we're setting an unfortunate precedent if we start removing trees every time a neighbour complains. And I'm sure in a number of in cities all over this country, people complain about trees all the time, similar nature. And preventative measures can be put in place. I just think that this is short-sighted, and we need to be looking at the long-term future of this town. We're trying to beautify this town, you know, to the extent we can. We've got an industrial process over here. But we are a major tourist venue. We are trying to attract tourists, make this town attractive. This is a very attractive tree, and I'd hate to see it that we put our street master plan in place, which has a number of areas where English oaks, scarlet oaks, pin oaks are going to be grown, huge tree, large trees, but where we can accommodate. And then we have to knock them down in the future because we have people complaining about their root systems. You know, one of the great appeals of the city of Orange in our near vicinity is the trees in that city. And they have managed to live with these trees being in roots and everything. And I have spoken to staff at Orange Council on occasions, and they do say, oh God, they get in the trains, they get in the water mains, but we, you know, they cope with it. And it's a trade-off. You try to create a pleasant environment for people who live here, for tourists, and for bringing people in. We have to, I think we're going to have to say, part of the hardship of that is that we're going to have some trees go into our mains, go into our water, and we have to work out ways to accommodate it, not just chop them down.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, right required. I love trees. I love native trees. These are just the European street tree. The tree hasn't been there for anyone's particular lifetime. It's only about 30 years old. I think it's going to impact council more, costing money to dig up, to try and put a barrier, and the tree being at risk of dying anyway. So I just think we need to remove it. And in the future, then we can turn around and make sure that we put barriers in place with our future tree master plan. Yes, we are a tourist area, and that's fine, but tourists don't come here just to look at our trees. With that, I do endorse the original recommendation, and I think it will be cost saving. And in the future, we can move forward and put preventative measures in place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you look back, you set a precedent in the last council, remove those trees. Which street was that?
They haven't been removed yet.
To Nolan
I
Street.
don't think they've been removed yet, have they?
Anyway, we set the precedent. Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? All right.
Use it, Brad.
Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trimbar? I didn't see your hand, that's all. Was that for or against?
I was supporting the motion.
So, those against the motion were 1, 2, 3, 4. So, Councillor McKechnie, Kibben, Tucker and Graham. And 4 were Councillor Trimbar, Hayden and myself. And therefore the motion is lost. We move on.
With no original proof.
With nothing except.
I know, we didn't even get an amendment up. It was a sensible way to move forward.
Through the chair, before we go in, whatever procedural matter that we need to deal with now is that you had an amendment to retain the tree, which was lost.
Yep.
You have an original motion to get rid of the tree, which was lost. We have no recommendation.
No. That basically went back to the original recommendation. And
Under a procedural model.
well, what is it?
The amendment would have. But it was lost.
So there is only, all that's there is the original recommendation. It is now lost. That does not prevent the general manager from seizing initiative and looking at barrier methods.
A procedural, well, that
Speak initiative.
through the chair, that would be lovely, but you've already resolved not to do that. and I like my job too much.
No.
To do something.
Could I suggest we put an alternate motion up at the next council meeting and try and look at it? Yeah. I'll work with anyone, come up with something.
This will be represented to the ordinary meeting in June.
And
You've got two conflicting things that we need.
that's right. I don't think it's that big an issue. We don't get on and sort it out.
And it
Just as you
Look,
say,
it may very well be when you do the barrier thing, to come back and say, look, it's got to go, that's fine. Because I think it is quite a, yeah, well, I've said my thing.
That's why we
All right.
would have been quite a good.
Yeah, no. All right, moving on, councillors, 5.5. All right, reef amenities. The recommendation is that council provide $21,169.09 be sourced from section 711 Rural Contributions Fund, with 50% coming from open space and 50% from community facilities to fund the amount paid to Bill Bright Head Company Proprietary Limited, which was placed in liquidation on the 20th of March 2023. Advise the funding authority of this decision and return any money received from the liquidation be provided equally back to the contributions fund for which the allocation was made. Move in a second, please. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Tucker. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move this recommendation. However, I do have a couple of questions. I am interested to know actually when the order was placed on Wiltrite sheds, and I do note that I think our payment went through on the day that the company was liquidated. There is a comment, there is a suggestion. There is a suggestion that our payment was actually made when the company knew it was insolvent. So I think that needs further investigation, because if it was sent through on the day that this company was placed into liquidation, and I'm not sure if it's a short form liquidation or a long form. I'm not sure if the planning and development director is aware. There's two you can apply to have a short form, which means you don't have to give a complete another set of accounts. You give a short conversion. It's a short form. But certainly we should maybe investigate that issue of whether they were knowingly insolvent at the time we made our payment.
Through the chair, as soon as we became aware on that day, we put the process in place that we're able to in order to try and retrieve the money.
Yep, that's notify the creditor, give a notice of debt or whatever you get.
And the liquidator has said, unfortunately, we're going to keep cat. We've gone down that path and we've tried to retrieve. We've used the same arguments that you've just eloquently spoken then, councillor. At the end of the day, they turned around and said, that money is in the pool, and because you now become a creditor, you'll go into the pool, and if you hit the mark, we give you whatever there is in there.
The liquidator is never going to admit that the directors at the time they placed this into liquidation knew that it was insolvent, especially if it would be interesting to determine when the meeting of the directors was held in relation to when our payment was made.
And once again, through the chair, the liquidator should have been the one who did that, and when we provided our information, we acknowledged all those things. I don't disagree with any comment that you've made. However, under the channels that have been made available to us to retrieve our monies, they've been unsuccessful.
Okay, well, I'm happy to move the recommendation on the basis of the information provided in this report and as orally provided in this meeting.
Councillor.
Yeah, second, just have to do it.
Councillor Hope.
Yes, I have a question regarding the reef amenities. We seem to want to pull money out of more council resources. Where's the responsibility and the liability that lies in with the project managers who have made the payment to gaining a resource without that resource being delivered?
Through the chair, my understanding is the project managers were in exactly the same position as we were. They weren't aware. They weren't made aware.
The payment came from council. I
Yep.
imagine.
But in the normal course of anything, why are we making payments without actually having that infrastructure or that product? We should only have to pay once something has been either completed or halfway through the project.
Through the chair, it's a question that I've also answered. My understanding is that as part of this process, it was a requirement that we needed to make the payment prior to the build. The other thing is that we were just buying the kit rather than having a build and construct component as part of it, because someone else was going to build it. So the process was that we needed to pay for the kit upfront.
Right, well, I hope in the next course of orders that these things happen, that the project managers can be a little bit more careful, because that's costing us then.
Through the chair, my understanding is that there are a lot of these things are when you do this sort of stuff. I don't want the money up front.
Councillor Trimber? You have any wish to-
I agree with councillor Hayden's points. I was very surprised that we'd actually made a payment for something, and normally in the course of business, it's a third, or a 50 and a 50 on completion. And if we're dealing with people in the future that require us to make full payments up front, that's something we need to discuss for future, because it's just not acceptable that we've lost money, and Central West Project Management must have some responsibility as the project managers, and if they don't, we probably need to review their contract, or the project manager that was managing that project should be under review. That's my only comment. We're going to have to find the money and have to wait, and hopefully we might get $1 or $2 here, but this is totally unacceptable to our community that we've lost this money. A well-earned grant money that's now, we have to find it from somewhere else.
You? Councillor McKibben. Was this right a reply?
Right reply, thank you. I'm happy that we proceed down this path. I think that we have to note the comments made by Councillor Hayden and Trembar. I was surprised that we would have paid 100% of the profit of the amount up front. I was surprised that we hadn't paid it. I would have expected a 10% deposit or something similar, with the rest on completion. And I just asked that the general managers, maybe we should review principles as these principles as a policy in future, that we do not make 100% payments up front for something, because we've been caught here, and maybe that should be communicated to CWPM as well, and to any other, to our own project managers, external project managers. You know, we have to learn from this experience.
Through the chair, the comment has been noted, and we'll take it up with the project managers, because it's something that I'll be after as well.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Motion passed. All right. Overall sports complex priority plan.
Mr. Mayor, I know I've asked the question of the general manager, and you think this should be in confidential, or we have
No, this is, the priority plan makes a big thing about this.
yes,
being out in the open.
keeping it. All right, I'm happy with that.
That's the reason.
Yeah, I'm happy.
But I had the same thoughts with it as well.
I'm through the chair, no more than myself, Gary, and the expert probity that we've been discussing this with. So
I have, yeah, okay.
All right. So the recommendation is the council adopt the Oberon Sports Complex priority plan for implementation to deliver the Oberon Sports Complex project. Provide the endorsed Oberon Sports Complex priority plan to its audit and risk improvement committee, ARIT, for information, and note the project update provided in this report. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse this recommendation. I don't have much further to say. We've gone into quite a in-depth in other meetings, and I'm happy to endorse it.
Before we get too further, Mr. Mayor, Councillor McKibben asked a number of questions that he sent to both himself, Gary, and all of council. We've endeavoured to answer those, but we've done that through our independent expert.
Right.
To give some surety to some of the questions that have been asked by Councillor McKibben. There are some gaps in that Gary has indicated that we'll fill in along the way, but the answers to those questions have been provided to you via your email, and also I've printed it off so you have it in front of you.
Sorry, this, yeah.
Just wanted to
Now,
make that.
Let's got it when at 1:45.
Yeah.
Do we have 5 minutes to read it?
you can read it, that's for sure. So as at this point, if you, once we get, the second of the day in, please.
Yeah.
We will, it's open for us to, for you to ask through me, of questions of, it's a child.
Fine, if we could maybe, I'm more than happy to second it.
Second it, and I'll give you 5 minutes.
I second it. I realise the absolute necessity for this document, as do all councillors.
Yep.
To move this project forward. I have raised some matters in an email, as the general manager has stated. And I think my concerns were, I think, down to the last statement I made in my email. I'm concerned that the expectations of Sport New South Wales or OOIS Office of Sport,
Let's just say that, and read the document so that you understand what's going on, and we'll take a 5-minute break while you read the documents. So if you can stop recording, please, Mr. Spinell. And the council, this meeting resumes at 3:27 PM. We've had a mover and a seconder for the motion. You wish to now speak?
I'm the seconder, I think.
Yes, you are.
Okay, if I could, as I said, I'm happy to move, second the recommendation. I did have some questions. Is it easier for the record if I read the question? So I had some questions in relation to the status of the documents referenced in the probity plan. One is the terms of reference for the PCG. And I just wondered that the status of that. I understand the terms of reference have not yet been drafted, but that Regions New South Wales and council may be assisting in the terms of reference drafting with PCG to finalise those. And maybe the first thing, a question that is also related to that, have those who are going to be on the PCG been firmly determined? Is it going to be Office of Sport, Regions New South Wales, Regional New South Wales, and the council? No, we're not. And council.
We're on that. So it has been resolved. It was a subject in the funding committee. It was a council representative of the Office of Sport, a representative of Public Works, 2 representatives of the department other than Public Works, the department being Public Region New South Wales. And at a stage down the track, representatives of all concerned stakeholders, including any entities that provide funding towards the project. So we get to the point of a construction contract, there'll be a representative of board on the PCG. And that'll be necessary to ensure that function of the PCG to consider matters and the brief on how that construction is going.
So probably tends to note that board would be asked to present, but doesn't envisage it being a member of the PCG, as I remember reading it.
At one point, that's correct. until such time as there's a finalised contract for the construction, or we have a conflict.
Yeah.
Once the finalised contract for construction is in place, it's a necessary function of the builder to be on the PCG to provide information as to the progress of the project.
Okay, and so they are going to be, because I got the impression even after the contract was signed, they would be asked to attend the meetings and give a status update, but they wouldn't have any voting rights.
Now that's open to the PCG. The voting rights are slightly different to the membership.
Yes.
They're to the parties to the funding, which is Department of Regions,
And OOS.
Office of Sport and Council. They're the voting rights, but the function of the PCG requires other parties to be there.
Yeah.
So there's other members.
Yeah, well, I was assuming they were attendees, not voting members, but okay, fine. All right, so
So the terms of reference, PCG is underway with basic terms of reference with the final terms of reference to be finalised. You'd appreciate that the project's on a tight timeframe.
Yeah.
So that's been necessary to enable the function of PCG.
oh, that's right. That's why I was wondering whether that could be done already.
We've used terms of reference from other PCG, but ours needs to be customized.
So when do we believe that they will be finalised?
I would have to take that on notice. The key focus has been on the activity schedule, given the timeframe involved. So I'd have to take that on notice. Provide
Milestones in the deeds. Don't know that we have access to, we see those milestones as yet.
the funding deed is a confidential document which can be released to council in closed committee, which I don't see any restriction to that.
Well, we should at least understand the milestones. I think as council to do our job.
So you may,
Through the chair, what we're proposing is that once the probity plan is in fact endorsed.
Yeah.
Then a schedule will be provided to council to give them an absolute understanding of where the process is, where the schedules are, what activities are required in each phase, and a milestone report based on that.
Right, so the milestone report will be dragged out of the deeds and provided.
Correct.
So we have not have.
However, I don't see any prohibition in providing the deed as long as it's in closed session. For us to participate in the PCD, we had to sign a confidentiality agreement that would bind the council, and the caveat would be that it's provided in closed session.
So it could be provided at the June meeting confidential session
Upon resolution.
upon resolution of this, for us to review, and I don't even mind if it's if it's provided as one copy looked at and has to be returned to the general manager.
And through the chair, based on council support for this probity plan, there will be a number of things that we will need to do in order to give you comfort around that space. But both are in the ones in the probity plan, ones in the deed. Probity plan is open to the public, and the reason why this is in public is because we want to show transparency of the
So can
document.
I ask how long the deed is? Is it?
About 65 pages.
It is a larger, so we would need, if we were going to review it as councillors, then we'd have to sit down and actually go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of boilerplate stuff, so I'm assuming there's about 30 pages of substance.
Provided to you in the log and
Yeah, that's, I understand.
We won't comment on the state government's deed, but it's convoluted and hard to read.
Look, okay. Okay, so I think we need to be aware that absolutely we need to be aware. Now, the risk allocation parameters, has there been any indication that they're going to accept the standard Australian standard sort of allocation of risk?
There's about 3 or 4 different
Australian standard.
departments of risk. Yours, it's estimate that was necessary to be done to enable the development of the funding deed. That's resulted in an activity schedule and a number of caveats that require the management of risk, one of which is the probity plan. By the time we get to the construction contract, the risk profile of the project will be understood because we'll have the detailed design and the cost. And there'll be a number of elements of that manage risk for things like, say, environmental management, workforce management, WHS.
But a lot of those are dealt with under our Australian standard.
The GP 21 contract is the appropriate standard.
Yeah.
Because it's in there as well.
But if what I'm saying is if we get to the construction phase, there's no suggestion that there'll be any risk allocation that will deviate a long way from what is in Australia, the GC.
No, not at all.
Okay, because that's a little.
There'll need to be an assessment done at the time we enter into the contract with the unusual nature of this.
Yeah.
And that will include some of the things that are otherwise included in the project plan. And you'll see them on about page 8. They're otherwise covered or drawn from the ICAC guidelines under negotiation.
Yeah.
So there's a whole section there that talks about the value of money methodology, risk and risk allocation, capacity capability assessment of the builder,
Yeah.
project management assurance, planning approval.
Yeah, I saw those and I probably don't think those later with you. No, I saw those. And part of that is going to be the assessment panel too, isn't it?
Yes, there's an assessment panel requirement in the process under this permitting plan.
A bit unclear how that's appointed, but
It's covered on page.
so it's not a point, they've said that it won't be appointed, the general manager can't be involved in it.
No, but it refers it to the project team, of which I'm the project director.
That's right.
My understanding is that I'll need to form that assessment panel. And I'll need to consult with the PCG and the business as usual supervision line with council, but it's to be done externally. So I'll need to see some experts for that assessment panel. So what you have here is the framework for what's going to happen. It doesn't prescribe the nuts and bolts, as you can see by my understanding of what's in front of me to do.
Yes, and it's in the nuts and bolts. It concerns me that they may have different expectations.
We should cover that now because while they may have different expectations, and that's been evident on the way through, the process of the PCG enables full and frank discussion, and should it not be able to be agreed, we have the option of a dispute resolution process if panel members from any section are dissatisfied with a particular decision. And there's also the opportunity to escalate it, because as I said,
But have unanimous agreement on the PCG?
consent.
If it's not, okay, so if regions and sport on the one hand and council on the other side, it has to go to dispute resolution if we can't agree.
It's what we could easily escalate it. I'd suggest we escalate it beforehand and try a length rather than go.
So who's the escalation?
So on our side, I'd write a report to council. On their side, we go senior within the Department of Regions.
And sport?
Sport are on the panel. They're not the lead agency. The Department of Regional New South Wales is the lead agency and they executed the funding deed.
And one of my questions was, later is sport likely to follow Regions New South Wales, or do they have independent criteria they wish to?
No, it's the same criteria. They are on the PCG panel because they have an interest in it. But to this point, the PCG panel has had some meaty things to deal with, but it seems to function reasonably in terms of talking things through and getting to a point. And I think everyone's aware that if you're not satisfied, there's a pathway to go to.
Yeah, that always that causes things to slow down and
It can
gel it up. If I can So the other, just if I can go through, 4, we talk about the methodologies for value for money.
Yeah,
And obviously that goes further than the quantity of surveyor.
it may not. If you go to page 8 of the
Yes,
document, there's a further discussion there that talks about if there's not any uplift in rezoning or any other benefit conferred in the land swap, there's probably not a lot to look at beyond the quantity surveyor and cost estimates, valuations and cost estimates of projects.
so we're on, you're looking.
So look at the second part under ROI
Yes,
on page 8. Such an assessment would include valuations through to the end of that paragraph.
okay, so that's the ROI for Borg, which is, you're saying is part of it, this total methodologies.
Yeah.
Or value for money.
Yeah. There will be another, as I mentioned before, there's a whole host of things to do prior to entering into a construction contract. And as I mentioned before, there'll be another value for money assessment on the part of the council when we see the detailed design and get the estimate of the quantity surveyor's estimate of value.
But there's also on this ROI the words. The returns to Borg from the proposal, particularly any positive value flowing from the land swap relative to the funds contributed to the delivery of the new facility.
So it goes on to say that if there's not uplift in the value of that block of land from rezonings or other things that add value to it, that there's not a lot to look at in terms of what the return on investment might be, apart from what it is at face of the evaluation cost it.
Just the words conferred a windfall profit on Borg.
Now, that's common from the guidelines. So the guidelines are designed to cover any number of direct negotiators projects. And you'll see some very large ones on the state.
Yes,
The government that have done, where there might be rezonings involved, there might be other uplift involved. This one's fairly simple compared to those.
Barangaroo.
I won't comment on that, but this one's fairly simple in comparison to the complexity of some other deals that are done by direct negotiators.
So it's actually PWA that will provide the report on Borg's capability and capacity.
No. Borg will develop a capability and capacity system that PWA will decide whether that's acceptable for a project of this type and report it to the PPT.
Capability and capacity system or capability and capacity report.
PWA will provide the report. Borg will develop their own system upon which PWA will report. Now, one thing is probably not obvious in any of this so far, if I could spin it, is that as part of the funding program under which this was gained, one of the rules of the funding program is Public Works provide the assurance. Because the state government want that level of assurance from Public Works.
So if we have Public Works involved.
We don't have any discretion on that.
No, I understand. Yeah. Why do we then need a separate assessment panel as well?
Because council views need to be heard on that, and it's council's project. Public Works is an assurance group. The risk is with us.
That's right.
So that's why we're having an assessment panel that will be established under the project director initially.
Also, why you have a program plan through advocacy.
So if PWA does the assessment and the members of the PCG don't agree with that assessment, they can still decide not to proceed.
I think that's extremely unlikely, and it's quite a reach, but legally, yeah.
But in that case, it would be escalated to council on one side, regions on the other.
Right. So a board happy that they have to provide this capability and capacity assessment to PWA system, sorry.
It's not ideal, the private sector,
And they'd have to provide transparency like an open book record, wouldn't
they have to provide a
they?
system.
I'm used to that in defence contracts.
They'd have to provide a system. In the private sector, they'd probably be more keen to build it and provide it to us in a simple arrangement. But we have systems in place for the expense of state government public money. And that's the system that we in the situation of being required to operate.
So it work under sort of cost investigation principle.
Day to day, and looking at what's being built
And what the profit element is and what the cost, profit margin.
well, profit may well be
It's maybe no profit in this.
that's right, it might well be a philanthropic contribution.
But they'd have to show that when they produce their transparent books for the project. Okay, I'll understanding with that. Yeah, so I think when you talked about the people on the PCG, is regional development on as well as regions?
They're one and the same.
That's what I thought, but
Department of Regional New South Wales is often referred to as region.
because the piece in this probity, it talks about representatives from regions, New South Wales and regional development. That's where I've been confused.
What's that?
As part of the deed, there is a requirement that there is. To carry on. Be represented in the department. It's a requirement of the council.
For two representing the department, that's fine,
That's about it.
but in,
They're one and the same department. Regions, Department of Regional New South Wales. It's just a terminology.
okay, it was just, I thought there was a distinction in the probity plan.
That's, yeah.
The assessment panel, you've already commented that you'll probably be as project director looking for the people and that they will be approved by the region of New South Wales or PCG. And does council have to approve the assessment panel as they're reporting to council?
Council is a member of the PCG.
Yes.
Council is,
Okay, so it's not, the response from OCM was that it had to be approved by DR New South Wales. It's actually approved by PCG.
that's right. If you look at the, probity event,
Yeah, I do remember.
I think it said that the assessment panel.
And does the PCG, there's nothing that says that the PCG has to accept any assessment panel's reports and determination.
No, there's a difference of opinion, you can expect people to hear
Okay,
it. But you do have representation on the PCG.
yes,
And as we've talked, escalation or conflict resolution if needed. So far, that PCG shows no signs of needing that.
we're at the initial stage.
I know that, but it doesn't mean we haven't dealt with a few disagreements.
So then the OCM provides its probity report at the same time that the assessment report is finalised. Is that right? I thought the probity report would come at the end of the project, but because the PCG and or everything.
I think it's a very steps. When you see the funding deed, it calls on a number of probity reports on the way through. So funding deed broken up into activities. We're currently working on activity 2 milestones. And one of those involves affirmation of the direct handling of a number of the elements of it. So there'll be a number of interim probity reports on different sections of the project, as well as ones at key junctures.
Okay. Because it. So, will it be, okay. And a final probity report when the project's completed, which wraps everything up.
OCM also provide that assurance to council that we're being transparent, taking the project in a way that meets the requirements of the direct build.
So when the assessment panel assesses the components offer,
Yeah.
it has to use all the criteria we've talked about on page 8, does it as well?
It can certainly respond to all of those criteria. As we've already discussed, the return on investment may be cost estimates and market valuations, because at this stage, I'm not aware of any other uplift that might otherwise occur. So it'll be a response to those categories that the assessment panel will look at.
So if, for instance, and I'm not suggesting there will be, but if there are variations as we go through, does a cost investigation have to occur on that variation to prove to the PCA, the CG, that it's worthwhile, that it's makes sense?
It would be ahead of consideration. We've already got an offer and an assessment of value. Yes, once we develop
On the core project, not
once
in
we
the
develop
variation.
the detailed plans, if there's that variation there, at the point of making the decision to recommend proceeding or not with the construction, there'll be an assessment of value for money there. You should be able to reasonably measure off against that value for money assessment if there's variations on the way. But you'll still need to independently look at whether you want the variations and may provide value for money. So it's not really different to any other project that way.
No, that's what I was getting. So we'd come to council and say, this is the change.
Certainly if it required more money, council. We've been providing periodic reports anyway, so if there are substantial variations, we cover that in the reports anyway.
So if it's a minor variation, that would be covered off in the project office?
Yeah.
Remembering council that you're aware of what the offer is
Yes.
and the requirements within that.
But if there's a variation, then it's quite possible board will say this falls out of our original scope, so we need money. The last one was the delineation of responsibilities between the GM and the approval authority, which is us as council, and the dual reporting or dual role as the GM as negotiator in the initial stage.
Yep.
And as implementer. Yep. And as you report to him, and any issues that you have theoretically get escalated to him. Then he would have a different, could have a situation with a conflict.
It's up to the general manager and myself to monitor conflicts of interest, including of ourselves, and to seek a remedy should we be concerned about that on the way through. The GM definitely has a dual role in this, and I'd expect that he would take advice from OCM if needed on the way through that. It's the system, can't stand around the dual role.
Well, I understand that.
And equally, OCM has outlined what that role is and where conflicts may arise to me in that dual role.
Right.
And I'll have to monitor that quite carefully when we're sitting to make decisions on this project, that's sitting as a council. We might actually go as far as Chicken and gentleman.
Yeah,
Well, that's contemplated in the project plan, in the project plan.
And we would just have the project director in there. If he's not a negotiator, he is someone who's
He's implementing.
planning.
So we're happy at this stage with what's occurred to date, that we're not going to have a major issue where on any of the assurances, on the questions of ROI, on form, or on methodologies, that Regions New South Wales and Office of Sport are not going to have differing expectations than council. That could cause delays or delays, basically causing delays in the project and then having to escalate it.
I can't tell you about unknown, but given the experience we've had so far, my belief is that Regions and Office of Sport need to see this project built.
Right.
And while there's been some differing opinions, the parties are working to deliver it.
Okay. That's all we can ask for at this stage, without all these documents obviously having been, or all those reports and documents having been finalised and seeing what the attitudes of the respective parties to them are. That's all from me. I'm sure other councillors have some questions as well.
You know, council? Council Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions about the privacy plan itself. I'm very pleased that Councillor McKibben has looked at it in so much detail, but I struggled with it. But my one question is on page 53, the second dot point. The last sentence says the evaluation of the proposal shows exceptional value for money project is well in favour of the Oberon community. Now, I'm not questioning that at all. I've always thought it was a good idea, but was that evaluation, was that in the current council or the previous council? I don't recall seeing it and I'm interested to have a look.
We could certainly provide that to you with the funding deed. Because as I mentioned, an evaluation of value of money was done in order to support that.
Yeah, but was that in the previous?
No, I would have thought we finished that about last December. We put a report up in December. Can't remember whether what specifically did that off the top of my head, but we can cover it going forward with what we released with the jungle.
Councillors? Please not speaking.
Yeah, I'm just interested to have a look at how that was assessed and how much it
I'll be happy to show you that, but that's part of confidential information. So we'll do it in that framework.
Yeah, or put on the portal perhaps. So that,
It's part of the confidential side of it.
yeah, or the portal's confidential.
Oh, the council portal is it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. That was all I had, Mr. Mayor.
You?
I just like to thank Councillor McKibben for going through so much detail and to go for answering questions in an easily understandable way. So thank you.
Councillor Primrose, ready to it? Councillor Primrose? No? I'm just going to make one observation, and that's about that particular diagram. Council, and that us is at the top of this tree. We make all decisions. And the project control group, despite its name, doesn't make, is not an authority. It can't authorize anything. It is there to provide what's the comfort to the funding authority. That it's all going well. It feels a bit complex at this stage. We haven't had it very long and we haven't sort of got used to wearing it. But I think it's a very workable process for what is actually a very complex procurement process. Is it going to go smoothly? Hopefully, but I'm sure there'll be bumps in the road some at various places, and we will just deal with them as they come up. But rest assured that the 9 councillors are the ones who make the decisions in this process. We take advice from various people, but it's the 9 councillors who actually make the serious decisions. So we've got a couple of years of interesting decision making ahead of us, just on this project alone. So in the absence of anyone else who wishes to speak, Councillor Hayden, like you want to reply, or?
No, Mr. Mayor, just thanks to this, Councillor McKibben for his questions and to Gary for the answers and nothing further to add.
Okay. I back it up, well done. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. So I have now told the truth in my mayor's column, which was being published.
Okay.
We're now ready to go confidential, aren't we? Okay, general business. I have 2 brief items, so I think they're important. The first one is that you've probably mostly missed it, but about a week ago, the Minister for Local Government got up in Parliament and absolutely hanged local government finances and the fact that we spend enormous amounts of money on various things that we've all got qualified audits. And it was a rant that was absolutely, in my view, disgusting to come from a person who's meant to be local government minister. It was taken apart fairly well by a sitting member in from Armidale, I think it was, who sort of explained why our finances are as they are. But the second part of this is actually about IPART. Was it last Friday, Gary? Was Friday before? In Sydney, the IPART commissioner spoke to the country mayors, and she was as shocked as we were about the emergency services levy, and she was working towards all sorts of remedies for it. I think she felt blindsided and was not best pleased at all. She has put out, I heard on the news on the way in this afternoon, she has put out an interim report which we knew was coming. And this is on the methodology for rate caps, because she firmly of the belief that yes, our finances are hampered by the methodology that's used to set rate caps. So it's an interim report, and I think the final report's due in about August. I think she is an honest broker. I think she's got a good head for what's going on, and hopefully there will be some method of getting through this. But at the moment, we have an antagonistic minister in charge of us, which means we're going to probably have an antagonistic bureaucracy in the office of local government. And we have, as you're all probably aware, we have at the moment potentially an extra $150,000 bill for the union levy for this year. I don't think it's going to be up that much by the end of the financial year, but it will be extra.
My bit of general business, just so that everyone's aware, Councillor Trember, Technical Services Officer Chris and myself went down to the roads conference yesterday, and we also came away with bad news. So we do have a bit of a difficult government that we are going to be dealing with, and in regards to the emergency services levy, the news we got from that as well is not good. Dari brought up the fact of the emergency services levy and the current, transport minister has turned around and said that it may end up to go up, not go down. So that was really disappointing, and then the allocation of money to council for their future road repairs was not a very nice amount either, so it needs to be 3 to 4 times that amount, so we don't have to be careful in going further with our decisions as well. So that's it.
Anyone else? Nobody else? All right, if there's no other general business, I will, I have a movement and second to go into, confidential, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor. Okay. All right, all those people on Zoom, we will now be, stopping the live streaming as we go into confidential. You stop the recording, please. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:29. We're back in open council. During the time we were not streaming or recording, there were 2 matters resolved. One is item 7.1, Morrison Road status update. And the recommendation was that report item 7.1 be received with information. The second matter was item 7.2, Tasman Street Council Land Valuation Report. And the recommendation was that council, or the resolution was that council sells the land located at 28 Tasman Street, Oberon, as it currently stands. During the period of closed session, there were no members of the public in the room or on live streaming. I'll now close the meeting at 4:30. The next work committee meeting of Oberon Council will be held on the 5th of September 2023, commencing at 2 p.m. in the Oberon Council chambers, 137 Oberon Street, Oberon. Thank you very much, councillors, and thank you to those who followed us on live streaming.